Hi, welcome to Light Lesson 4. For this lesson, we'll be learning about what causes a shadow to change in size. From the previous lesson, we've learned about what causes a shadow to change in shape. As we can remember, we can change the shape of a shadow by changing the position in which the object is placed, such as shown in this example here. When the cone is placed at the side, the shadow that's seen on the screen is a circle, and when the cone is placed in the upright position, then the shadow that's seen on the screen is actually a triangle. We can also change the shape of the shadow by changing the position of the light source, as shown in the example here. When the light source is placed above the cone, then the shadow is actually a circle, and when the light source is placed on the left side of the cone, then the shadow that's shown on the screen is actually a triangle. And so for today's lesson, what causes a shadow to change in size? And basically there are two things that can cause a shadow to change in size: the distance between the light source and the object, and the distance between the object and the screen. For the next part of the lesson, I'll be showing how changes in the position of the light source, changes in the position of the ball or the object, and changes in the position of the screen will cause a change in the size of a shadow. In order to explain better, I will not be using a 3D screen as shown here, but I'll be using a side view of the screen as shown in the next picture. First, let us examine how changing the position of the object will affect the size of the shadow on the screen. Let's say that we have the ball here, and when the ball is placed in this position, it will cast a shadow. And so if I were to draw the light rays coming from the light bulb, the light ray will pass on either side of the ball like this, and light rays that's coming from here will be blocked by the ball, and that's why there will be a shadow that's formed on the screen here. So what happens when I change the position of the ball? When I move the ball closer to the lamp, you see that the rays of light are blocked, and that means that only rays of light that's coming from here and here will be able to be seen on the screen, and all these other rays of light, the rays of light from here to here, these rays of light here, will all be blocked by the ball, and so then the shadow that's seen on the screen will actually become bigger. It will be from here all the way to here. So when we move the ball from position 1, this position here, and the size of the shadow was actually like this, from here to here, and we move it to position 2, which is here, then the size of the shadow actually increases. And so that means that the closer the object is to the light bulb or the light source, the bigger the shadow cast by the object on the screen. Of course, if you do it the opposite, for example, if the ball is here in position 2 and you move it to position 1, then the shadow becomes smaller. So we can change the size of the shadow by changing the position of the object, by moving the object closer to the light source or further away from the light source. Besides moving the object, we can also move the light source. When the light source is in position 1, a shadow is formed on the screen as shown previously. So now what happens if we move the light source closer to the ball? If we move the light source closer to the ball, here, then the light rays that come from the light bulb will form a wider angle, and all the rays here will be blocked by the ball. And so that means that the shadow that's seen on the ball, seen on the screen, will become bigger when the ball is in position 2, as seen here. And so whenever the light source or the light bulb is moved closer to the ball or closer to the object, the shadow increases in size. And of course, the opposite is true. If the light bulb is moved further away from the ball, then the size of the shadow would decrease. And finally, we can also move the screen. If we keep the ball and the light bulb fixed, then what we have here is a shadow on the screen like this. Let me draw the shadow. And now what happens if I were to move the screen? If I were to move the screen closer to the ball, you can see that the shadow actually becomes smaller. And if I were to move the screen further away from the ball, then the shadow would become bigger. So, as the screen is moved closer to the ball, the size of the shadow actually decreases. And when the screen is moved further away from the ball, the size of the shadow increases. Or the other way around, if the ball is moved closer to the screen, the size of the shadow would decrease, and if the ball is moved further away from the screen, the size of the shadow would increase. And to help you to remember, if you ever see questions that ask you about moving the light bulb or moving the light source, or moving the object or moving the screen, what will happen to the size of the shadow, you just need to remember the 2 points that I taught earlier, which is the distance between the light source and the object, and the distance between the object and the screen. So as the distance between the light source here, and the object decreases, so if I move the ball closer to the light source, or if I move the light source closer to the ball, either way it will cause the distance between the object and the light source to decrease. And if the distance decreases, the shadow will become bigger. And you can re-look at the video to check for yourselves. And similarly, as the distance between the object and the screen decreases, so in this case here, I can move the object closer to the screen, or I can move the screen closer to the object. Either way, when the distance becomes smaller, or when the distance decreases, then the shadow becomes smaller. And I hope that this will make it easier for you to remember. So to repeat again, as the distance between the light source and the object decreases, the shadow becomes bigger. And as the distance between the object and the screen decreases, the shadow becomes smaller. Thank you for watching the lesson videos, and I hope that you've enjoyed watching them.